What if I told you that everything you thought you knew about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard might only be half the story? I know, it sounds wild. But sometimes, the real truth doesn't scream from the headlines. It whispers from the background, where very few people are actually looking. And I get it. We live in a world of constant news alerts, flashy updates, social media hot takes. Everyone's got an opinion, and everything feels urgent. But have you ever stopped and thought, wait a second, am I actually getting the whole story? That feeling, that weird pit in your stomach that something's off. You're not crazy. A lot of people feel that way. So, welcome back. It's great to have you here. Because today, we're doing something a little different. We're hitting pause on the noise and digging into the story behind the story. One that goes beyond tabloid drama. Beyond celebrity gossip. This is about Johnny Depp. It's about Amber Heard. And it's about what happens when one of the most famous men in the world decides he's done being silent. Now, before we jump in, let me ask you something. Have you ever had your name dragged through the mud? Maybe someone said something about you that just wasn't true, and you couldn't speak up. Couldn't clear your name. That's a nightmare most people can't even imagine. Now picture that happening with cameras on you. With journalists reporting every word. With millions of strangers forming opinions about you without knowing a single real detail. That's what Johnny says happened to him. Let's rewind for a second. Back to 2018. That was the year Amber Heard wrote that now infamous op-ed for the Washington Post. She said she was a survivor of domestic abuse. She didn't mention Johnny by name, but let's not kid ourselves. The connection was obvious. It was instant. People assumed it was about him. And the fallout? It was fast and brutal. Practically overnight, Johnny went from one of Hollywood's biggest stars to someone studios didn't want to touch. He lost his role in Pirates of the Caribbean, a role that had become iconic, that he poured years of his life into. Gone. Just like that. He says he was dropped without even a proper conversation. No phone call. No chance to defend himself. Now, think about that for a second. Imagine spending years building your career. Winning fans. Making hits. Becoming part of pop culture history. Then it all disappears. Not because of a verdict, not because of proof, but because of a single article. That's the power of public perception. And what's even more shocking? Johnny says he was told to stay silent. That speaking out would make things worse. So he didn't. For a while, he kept his mouth shut. And the stories kept coming. The media ran wild with it. Suddenly, he was the bad guy. Memes. Tweets. Think pieces. You name it. And while all this happened, Johnny was stuck. Watching his reputation fall apart while he stayed quiet. But he didn't stay quiet forever. Eventually, he decided enough was enough. And when he finally spoke up, it wasn't just a press release. He took it to court. He filed lawsuits. He faced Amber directly. And he didn't just say, "I didn't do it." He came with evidence. Real evidence. Messages. Audio recordings. Witnesses. It wasn't just his word anymore. It was documented proof. One of the moments that shocked people the most. That leaked audio. You probably remember it. Amber says to Johnny, "Tell the world, Johnny. See who believes you." And wow, just hearing that hit different. Because he did tell the world. And people did believe him. That moment was huge. It gave a voice to so many people who've been told, "No one will believe you." Who've been scared into silence. Who've been afraid to speak up because they thought no one would take their side. And in that courtroom, for the first time in a long time, Johnny finally had the chance to speak freely. But here's where the story takes a bigger turn. It wasn't just about Amber. It wasn't just about their relationship. Johnny started talking about something deeper. Something a lot of celebrities stay far away from, how Hollywood actually works. And what he said was kind of chilling. He described Hollywood as a place where truth doesn't really matter. Not when there's a story to sell. Not when public image is at risk. If there's even a whiff of controversy, people back away. Studios drop you. PR teams go silent. People who once praised you won't return your calls. It's not about facts. It's about optics. That's hard to hear, right? But it also kind of makes sense when you think about it. This industry, movies, TV, fame, it's built on image. On branding. And if someone becomes bad press, even for a second, they get pushed out. Sometimes without proof. Sometimes without trial. Johnny says that's exactly what happened to him. And he's not the only one. In fact, if you look back at other scandals in Hollywood, you'll start to see a pattern. People being cut off, dropped, or cancelled, often based on allegations alone. That doesn't mean all accusations are false. Not at all. But what Johnny wanted people to understand is that in his case, he says, no one gave him the chance to explain. They just assumed. He said, truth doesn't matter. Only the image does. And honestly, that's one of those quotes that just sticks with you. Because it says so much, not just about his experience, but about how fast people are to judge. To choose a side. To cancel someone. Now, if you're still with me, thank you. Because this is where things get really interesting. There are lessons to learn here. Not just for celebrities, but for all of us. About how we treat people. About how we handle accusations. About how we chase justice versus attention. Here's one big takeaway. Reputation is fragile. Especially in the public eye. One wrong word. One misleading headline. One clip out of context. And boom, it can all be over. But what set Johnny apart was how he handled it. He didn't fight fire with fire. He didn't lash out. He built a case. Carefully. Calmly. With evidence. And legal experts. They were impressed. They said it was one of the most well-structured defenses they'd seen in a celebrity case. He didn't rely on drama. He relied on facts. And here's what really surprised people, after everything, after all the courtroom moments, the fan support, the career fallout, Johnny wasn't angry. He said he wasn't in it for revenge. He didn't want to ruin Amber. He didn't want payback. All he wanted was the truth to come out. That's it. Just the truth. Now, think about that for a second. Really think about it. Imagine being in his shoes. You've spent decades building a name, working on your craft, rising from quirky roles to one of the most beloved actors of your generation. Then, suddenly, that legacy gets dragged through the mud. Not because of something proven. Not because of any hard evidence initially shown to the world. But because someone wrote a few words in a newspaper. And those few words became a tidal wave that washed away nearly everything you've built. Most people, let's be honest, would want revenge. They'd want to get even. They'd want to burn it all down just to make a point. They'd want the world to suffer the way they did. That's human nature, right? When someone hurts you deeply, when you lose your voice, your reputation, your dignity, most people don't stay calm. Most people don't just say, I just want the truth. But that's what Johnny did. That's what stunned so many people who were watching this case unfold. After being labeled, mocked, and judged, after losing roles, friendships, and professional opportunities, he stood up in front of the world and basically said, I'm not here to destroy anyone. I'm just here because I deserve to be heard. It's rare to see that kind of restraint. That kind of emotional control. And it tells you something deeper about who he is, or at the very least, who he chose to be in that moment. Because let's be real, it takes strength not to lash out. It takes strength not to want to retaliate. Especially when you know what you've lost. And he lost a lot. Think about it. There was a time when Johnny Depp was everywhere. From Edward Scissorhands to Captain Jack Sparrow, from Finding Neverland to Fantastic Beasts, his face, his voice, his style, it all left an impression. People didn't just admire his acting. They connected with him. He brought something different to the screen. A sense of mystery, vulnerability, even a bit of rebellion. He wasn't your typical Hollywood star. He was unpredictable. And that's what made people love him. Then, in the blink of an eye, that all faded. And yet, through all that noise, through the mocking, the memes, the late-night jokes, Johnny kept saying the same thing: I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. But I didn't do what I was accused of. That's powerful. Because he wasn't claiming to be a saint. He wasn't pretending to be flawless. He admitted to flaws. To arguments. To pain. But he drew a line between imperfection and abuse. And that line, he defended fiercely. So when he finally got his day in court, and the spotlight was back on him, not for a movie, but for his own life, he didn't turn it into a spectacle of vengeance. He didn't grandstand. He didn't gloat. He simply laid out the facts. He shared the recordings. The texts. The witnesses. And when asked what he wanted, his answer wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even bitter. He said, I just want the truth. That response resonated with a lot of people. Because there's something universally human about that desire. When your name has been dragged through the dirt, when people have made up their minds without ever hearing your side, all you want is for the truth to be known. To be seen for who you really are, not just the version people created in their heads. And that's what this whole journey was about for him. Not revenge. Not career revival. Not headlines. Just truth. Of course, people around him likely wanted more. Fans were angry. Friends were frustrated. Some probably told him he should go after Amber with everything he had. Sue for damages. Press charges. Expose every last detail. But Johnny's focus stayed on one thing: clearing his name. He wasn't trying to silence Amber. He wasn't trying to prove she never heard either. He just wanted the world to understand that this story wasn't one-sided. That the narrative people had been fed wasn't the full picture. That he, too, had been hurt. That he, too, had a voice. And that kind of restraint, it shifted how people saw him. It reminded us that even in the messiest, most emotional moments, there's dignity in simply telling your truth. Not shouting it. Not forcing people to accept it. Just laying it out, calmly and consistently, and letting others see it for themselves. In a way, that made Johnny more relatable. Because how many of us have felt misunderstood? Misjudged? Blamed for something we didn't do? We might not live our lives in front of cameras, but we know that feeling of being unheard. And watching him handle it the way he did, openly, but without venom, made a lot of people stop and reconsider what they believed about him. This wasn't about fame anymore. It was about something way more human. He wasn't chasing sympathy. He wasn't performing. He was standing there, not as a movie star, but as a man trying to reclaim his voice. And even after the trial ended, even after the verdict leaned in his favor, Johnny still didn't turn bitter. He didn't go on a media tour to bash Amber. He didn't release documentaries or interviews trashing her character. Instead, he went quiet again. He returned to music. To art. To the quieter things that seemed to bring him peace. And that silence. That refusal to spike the ball. That's when people really saw it. That he meant what he said. That he really wasn't in it for revenge. He wanted peace. He wanted closure. He wanted his life back, not just his career, but his sense of self. Because when you've been stripped of your voice, your reputation, and your dignity, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to fight harder. It's to speak clearly. To show your truth. And then to walk away with your head held high. Johnny did that. And whether you're a fan of his work or not, that moment, of choosing truth over revenge, deserves to be seen for what it is, a quiet kind of strength. One that's all too rare in today's world. And maybe, just maybe, that's the part of his story that'll stick with people the longest. That says a lot about someone's character, doesn't it? Now here comes the curveball. The part a lot of people don't talk about. While all of this was happening, while the world watched the trial, the media. It was making money. Big money. Think about it. Every clip, every headline, every live stream, millions of views. Advertisers were thrilled. Commentators were cashing in. News sites saw huge spikes in traffic. The more dramatic it got, the more attention it brought in. And attention, in media, equals money. So while Johnny and Amber were fighting for their reputations, some media companies were quietly benefiting from the chaos. Wild, right? And this is something we're going to explore even more in a future video. Because there's a whole system behind the way these stories are told. The way people are framed. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. But for now, let me ask you this. Do you think Johnny really got justice? Was the truth finally heard? Or is this just one piece of something even bigger and more complicated? Is this about one man and one woman? Or is it about how society treats people accused of something, before the facts are even known? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I really want to hear from you. Your perspective matters. Every comment adds to the conversation. And if you found this video interesting, if you like deep dives like this, the real story behind the headlines, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Tap that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. Because trust me, there's so much more to unpack here. In fact, there's another video right here I think you'll love. It connects all the dots and shows you even more of what went on behind the scenes, stuff the mainstream media totally skipped over. Thanks for spending time with me today. Seriously. It means a lot. Stay curious. Stay kind. And whatever you do, keep asking questions. Because sometimes, that's the only way we get closer to the truth. Catch you next time.